the roller coaster. You probably don't need to know too much about this, and you might get more out of this from just reading it when I send you the slides. But some people talk about missing the buzz, missing the euphoric feeling of that first drink in particular. And as I said earlier, I never hear anyone getting excited about having the second or third drink. We often get excited about the anticipation that comes before. Get clear on that. Are you looking forward to the anticipation of the event or the event itself? It's really important. Think about it. With the first drink, we feel euphoria. It's a drug, as I've said, it has to have an upside or we wouldn't get addicted and we wouldn't keep coming back for more. When we have the first drink, we release dopamine. It makes us feel good. We want more of it. When we drink, it changes the effects of GABA, which is a neurotransmitter. I'm not a scientist, but I want to just explain this. GABA regulates our emotions. It does the same with our nervous system behavior, inhibitions, and it impacts it. GABA is like a brake in a car on our emotions and our inhibitions and things like that. And when alcohol gets involved, the braking system gets out of whack, which is why we lose our inhibitions. We become emotionally unstable. And I'm going to explain a little bit more about that. Now, our brain wants to keep us in a place of homeostasis at all times. Homeostasis is your baseline of happiness, and it wants to keep us there the whole time. And I'm going to explain this on the next slide. So here's a diagram I did myself. I stole a little bit of it and did the rest myself. I'm quite proud of my work here. So homeostasis is where the smiley emoji is. That is your baseline of happiness. If you don't drink and you're eating healthily and exercising regularly, you will find yourself in a state of homeostasis most of the time at your baseline happiness, where you're not jumping with joy, overwhelmed happy, where you want to do jumping jacks because your life is so immense, but you're feeling good, you're smiling, you're in a good place, and you're not too sad, you're not too depressed. Your brain wants to keep you there, so it does everything it can to keep us there. So when you try to falsely move it somewhere else, it is going to fight back, and this is what happens. So the green line is the effect. The blue line is the release of dopamine. So you have your first alcoholic drink, and I know exactly how this feels through my own experience, and it causes a spike of dopamine, a feeling of euphoria. Then you do feel like jumping around, dancing, your inhibitions go. You feel euphoric. Only the first drink. Have you ever noticed that? You only really feel euphoric for the first drink, because after the first drink, the red line appears. Your brain releases dynorphin, which regulates your mood and emotion. Because you've sent the baseline happiness out of whack, massively out of whack, with this huge hit of dopamine, your brain says, what the hell's going on? I need to get you back to baseline. So it releases dynorphin, which effectively is a downer. It's a downer chemical. It wants to get us back to homeostasis. So it releases something to counter the dopamine. So as it releases that, your mood starts to come down as the amount of alcohol goes up, because you continue to chase the euphoric feeling that you only ever get from the first drink. You never get it from second or third because of all this that's going on. So the effects of the first drink wear off. And as we come down, because we've had such a hit of dynorphin to offset the dopamine, we actually end up feeling worse than when we started drinking, which is why you see people feeling super stressed, emotional, bursting into tears at the end of the night, becoming aggressive or violent. They're actually below their baseline of happiness. And in pretty much every case, we end up feeling more sad, more anxious, more stressed, more worried, more angry than before we started drinking. And you can find this online. Like I said, the bit with the lines, I actually took it from a science website that did a study on this, and it's got all the facts and all the numbers and all the information there. So, and then the good news is when we stop drinking, all of the lines come together and we find our baseline and we stay there long term. So that's important, because when we're consistently on that baseline, we start to feel good. And even after we quit, your mind, your brain can be used to it being sent out of whack. And you can actually have periods where it will release dynorphin, even though it hasn't had the dopamine hit, because it thinks every day at 8 p.m. it needs to do it. It needs to bring the baseline back into its normal levels, which is another reason why over that first week it can feel really hard. Because imagine that you're getting a hit of dynorphin, which brings you down. It's a downer. And you're not even having the dopamine hit. Imagine how sad it's going to make you feel. So hopefully once you know that this stuff is going on, you get an understanding of it, you can feel a sense that this isn't something to feel down about. This is a sign of your mind and body healing. So when you notice that you feel really emotional, and it tends to peak at around 72 hours after you quit, that it's this stuff that's going on. And also, if you do decide to drink, you'll start to notice this. You can't unlearn this stuff, and you'll be paying attention to it. And if you are still drinking, write it down. How does it feel before you drink, when you're drinking, and right after you drink, and as you get into your second, third, and fourth drinks? How does it feel? Hopefully you're not going to drink anymore after this, but I'm a realist. Some people are absolutely going to, before they move into a place where they become alcohol free. So instead of beating yourself up about it, gather data, use it to your advantage. What can I learn from this? Well, Simon was talking about how we have this reaction, this change in our emotions and how we feel. Notice it, log the data. It's a great thing to do. And Annie Grace has a video where she drinks after she's quit, and I don't recommend doing this, but it was a period, I think about 6 months after she quit drinking, she drank a whole bottle of wine. She had no external stimulus like music or company. It was just her in a room with a bottle of wine. She videoed herself and she paid attention to it. And you can watch it over a kind of time lapse. At the start, you see the euphoria. She's laughing. She's super happy. By the end of it, she's practically in tears. It is absolutely unbelievable. And if you're in one of my groups, I'll try and find that video. And if you're in one of the Naked Mind groups, you should be able to find it anyway. It's so informative and powerful. So I would recommend watching that, because it proves this in another way. Hopefully that made some sense to you. And let me just check if I need to do another poll, even though I've got it on the screen, which I shouldn't have. There we go. Right, let me just launch that one. So have you experienced emotional instability during or after drinking? I'd like you to think about that. And if you have, you've got evidence. We were talking earlier about when you form a new belief, whether you've got evidence. If you've experienced emotional instability, you've now got evidence that what I just told you is absolutely true, and it's out there. So when you're thinking about those beliefs, alcohol's a reward. Is emotional instability a reward? Is feeling sad, tearful, worried, anxious, stressed? That's not a reward. I don't think it is anyway, and I'm sure you don't. Yeah, so overwhelmingly, let me just end that and share. Overwhelmingly, we've got 98% of people have experienced emotional instability either during or after drinking. That says it all. And I'm going to share with you now my 18-wheeler truck theory. And there's someone called Dr. A. Jaffe, and again, there's a brilliant video I can share with you on this as well, who talks about this in a slightly different way. I kind of borrowed the analogy from him, but it's brilliant. So what you need when you quit drinking, bear that diagram in mind that I just shared. When you quit drinking, imagine in your mind that you've got, so GABA's a neurotransmitter. I do not want to get all sciencey on you. It's not my area anyway. Just imagine that when you don't drink, you have a braking system like you have in a car in your head. This braking system controls your emotions. It stops them leaking out of your head and becoming overwhelming. It controls your inhibitions. So it's like a brake pedal for your emotions. So when you don't drink, that braking pedal works perfectly fine. Now, if you didn't have that brake pedal, an example might be that I share with you that someone I know passed away, for example, and you suddenly become really, really emotional. You start crying, which is an overreaction because your emotions aren't in check. There's no regulation on your emotions. The brake pedal's not there. That would be an example of emotions becoming overwhelming or getting out of control. So when we don't drink, our GABA is fine, our brake pedal is fine. When we start to drink, over time, particularly, alcohol takes over the job. GABA thinks alcohol's got its foot on the brake pedal now. They're drinking every day, or there's always alcohol around. I'm going to let them do the job. They seem to be doing it just fine. So alcohol basically takes over the brake pedal. What then happens is you've got this instability of emotions. Alcohol's not very good at controlling the brake pedal, as we saw from the diagram. But worse, when you stop drinking, it's similar to an 18-wheeler truck full of emotions with no brakes, because you've cut alcohol out. GABA still thinks alcohol is doing the job of your emotional braking system. And there's a period where you've got no regulation on your emotions. And this is why over the first week or so, some people feel really, really emotional. They think that drinking's the answer. It's not. The answer is to allow your natural brake pedal to get back in control. And it doesn't take too long. And that's what happens. And we can see, often I see people feeling really teary or having emotional meltdowns over that first week. As I said, it tends to peak around 72 hours. It tends to get better and better. After the first week, you're 60 to 70% mentally tougher, more resilient than when you started. So it gets better quickly. Emotions can be up and down for different times for different people. I found that after the first month or so, I was feeling really good. I felt quite in control of my emotions, and it just got better and better and better. So it's important you pay attention to this stuff and really get into what's going on for you. But for some people, it can go on a bit longer, but inevitably it just improves. It gets better and better. So I've explained all of that. Yeah. So notice what triggers you as well. Notice when something sends you into an emotional tailspin. I've done a lot of work on this, and I do it with the people in my groups and my programs, but get really curious about it. I always say, when it's hysterical, it's historical. Now, right at the start, that's not necessarily the case, but as you go forward, if you find yourself having hysterical emotional reactions to anything, there's a good chance that that's come from something in your past, maybe a trauma, maybe some kind of emotional neglect or an episode from when you were younger. And I don't want to get massively into childhood stuff. I talk about that more in my programs, but when it's hysterical, and you have a hysterical reaction, just pay attention to it. See it as a gift for you to explore, and try and think of a time when you've had an emotional, overwhelming reaction. Maybe it was something one of your kids did, something your partner said. You felt like maybe someone was judging you, talking over you. Often those things are linked to when we were younger. So for me, it's rejection. My father abandoned me when I was 2 years old, and my mum emotionally neglected me. So anything around rejection, I feel that emotion rising within me. And it has been in the past hysterical, and I've found myself in tears or having a really massive meltdown. Now I understand it, and now I've done the work around it. It doesn't affect me in that way. I just see it as a gift for me to explore now. So try and notice it. But as I say, I don't want to get too much into the past and trauma stuff. Right. I'm going to start moving a bit faster through these because I've realized I'm not going quick enough. Right. Reasons people go back to drinking after they've quit. Believing that alcohol will end short-term discomfort, cravings, emotions, thinking that quitting drinking is too hard. That's a common one. Or failing to prepare. You're preparing right now. Boredom. We need to get new hobbies. Find out what lights us up and brings us joy and immerse ourselves in it. Think about what you used to do when you were younger that you just lost track of time. Bit like me when I'm on these. And you just lost track of time because you got so immersed in it. That's what you should be doing instead of drinking. Maybe arts, crafts, playing an instrument, learning a language. Increased stress, lack of relaxation techniques like meditation, issues with sleep, people pressuring them to drink. If you've got friends who don't think it's a great idea that you quit and you allow them to pressure you, or you're in a codependent relationship, people enabling you to drink, they can be reasons too. Sticking to old routines and visiting your old haunts after you've quit. There's a phrase, if you sit in a barber's shop long enough, which is not something I do because I have no hair. If you sit in a barber shop long enough, you're going to get a haircut. If you go to the pub every day and you want to quit drinking and you don't find new hobbies, new activities, things to engage and immerse yourself in, and you just keep going to the pub but sit there drinking water, you're probably going to eventually give in. You're probably going to end up drinking at some point. You're going to get that haircut. So change it up. Do something different. This is a new you, a better you, a new version. Failing to form new beliefs and a lack of commitment or motivation. Well, we've covered a lot of that. Lack of support and connection. Make sure you join some online sobriety groups. I've got a free Facebook group called Be Sober, BE Sober. You can join. There's like 16,000 people in that group. You'll get all the connection and support you need in there. Difficulty dealing with feelings and emotions, denial, shame, regret, loneliness, anger, worry, fear, sadness. I'm going to touch on those in a bit. Times of celebration, that can be hard. Make sure you have a plan for any big celebrations. We've just gone through Christmas and New Year. So if you've got that under your belt, that's a huge milestone. Celebrate the fact that you've just achieved something. So, but if you've got a wedding or a party, not that there's much of that going on right now, you need to make sure you have a plan. And there's books, blog posts, videos that will set you up for success with things like that. Not understanding FOMO and JOMO. So FOMO is the fear of missing out. Okay. Maybe all your friends were going out to the pub and you think, oh my God, I'm going to miss out if I don't go. And you have FOMO, the fear of missing out. Scrap that. In sobriety, we have JOMO, the joy of missing out. That's when we do the things we really love and we become able to say, no, I don't really want to go to that. I'm not going to get anything from it. I didn't really enjoy it anyway, because we've connected with the real version of ourselves and we've become true and authentic. And we say no when we don't want to do something. That's not to say that sometimes we do want to go out to those things and we might want to drive, we might want to go for a few alcohol-free drinks and leave early, whatever we need, but we embrace the joy of missing out. And I would often do things with my son or go out with my wife instead of going out boozing, because that brings me real joy, and I'd embrace the joy of missing out. New Year's Eve is a classic. Not being out on a cold, windy night in London where I can't get a taxi home, everything's spinning because I've been drinking since midday, versus the joy of missing out, like the night before, under a nice blanket on my sofa, watching a movie, eating popcorn. Heaven, the joy of missing out. Get with the JOMO. Failure to identify what causes triggers is another one as well. And forgetting that we always have the power of choice. In every situation in our lives, we have the power of choice. That doesn't mean those choices are always good, but there's always options. There's always choices. And drinking is not the only option. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in just a second. Okay. So here we go. One more of these just to share. So if you've taken a break from drinking, I'd like to know what's caused you to return to drinking. So, and there's one on there, I haven't taken a break yet. So which is one you can answer as well. So I'd be interested to see what comes up there. So boredom looks like a big one. Drinking to end discomfort from cravings. And it's important to know that those cravings, they go so quickly. And I'm going to share some tactics to get through them. Sticking to old routines. Again, make a new routine. Really important. Lack of support. So I'll share that with you guys. I drank to end. So the biggest one is I drank to end the discomfort and the cravings. So we need some craving busting techniques, which we're going to get to in just a minute. I'm just going to fly through these a little bit quicker. Sorry, if you don't know me already, I have a bad habit of talking for too long. We've got 40 minutes left. There's no way I'm going to get through all of these. I did too many. Right. But I'll be sending you the slides so you can jump in with the slides. So, right, the first 3 to 5 days are all about digging in deep, managing the symptoms of withdrawal. Alcohol, no, it's like a spectrum. Doesn't matter how much we drink, there will be some level of craving, and they tend to peak about 72 hours after the last drink. It will try to call you back. Expect it to do it, but it's an illusion. It's the master of illusion. Here's some of the things that you can experience over that first week. Expect it, know it. And I've got a diagram here where I've got these guys on one side of this wall, and they're just saying to themselves, it's too hard. There's nothing good over that other side of the wall. We might as well just stay here and keep drinking. And these guys, it was tough that first week, but we're free. We're happy. We're on the other side. So take that step. It's a small price to pay. And sure, you might scrape your knee as you go over the wall. You might bang your elbow. But once you're over, you'll see what's on the other side, and you'll never, ever want to go back to this side with the old broken bottles and the trash on the floor. So if I have put there, if you have anything other than mild withdrawal symptoms or anything that's listed, get medical help. There can be more severe withdrawal symptoms, but they tend to be rare and only in the most extreme of drinkers. So it's 90% of people are mentally addicted to alcohol. It's not physical. It's all up here. So you change your mind, you change your relationship with booze. The key ingredients you need, right? This is the good stuff. You need a journal. You have to journal. Try and show up daily and write in your journal. And show up daily. The Seinfeld strategy, I'll just briefly share this. Focus. A lot of people count the days when they quit. Focus as much on showing up and just doing your work every day as you do with counting the days. Counting the days is awesome. And if it works for you, that's great. But I'm far more interested in people just turning up and doing the work. Define what doing the work is to you. Is it writing in your journal? Is it meditating for 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the evening? Is it connecting in a Facebook group, listening to a podcast, whatever it might be, reading a chapter of a book, whatever? Define your work, define how much time you're going to spend on it. Get a wall chart, a wall planner, and every day you show up and do your work, put an X on that wall planner. And you'll create a chain. You'll like the look of the streak that you've created, and you'll feel good about it. And you'll want to keep it going. Now, the principle with it is consistency rather than focusing on the end goal. It's a bit like if I wanted to learn Japanese and I knew it was really hard. It feels like a massive mountain to get to a place where I can speak fluent Japanese. So instead, I focus on just showing up every day and doing a little bit of work. I know that if I put in 30 minutes work every day, that maybe after 6 months, I might be able to order a coffee, possibly. I only know a few words of Japanese, but I will continue to develop. So focus on progress, not perfection. Focus on putting the work in every day and define what that looks like for you. Look up the Seinfeld strategy because there's quite a funny, interesting story that goes with it, but I don't want to share it now because I'm mindful of the time. Get motivated and get excited by knowing what you will gain. I'm going to tell you everything you'll gain as well. You need support. Find a tribe, find a community. My Facebook group with the free Be Sober Facebook group is a great place to start for that. Be accountable. Accountability means putting it out there with people who you feel safe with, sharing your story. Take responsibility for yourself. Stop thinking you can moderate. People who buy books about quitting drinking or are assessing their relationship with booze, generally moderation is simply a rite of passage to quitting drinking. We all tend to try it, and we try to hang on to that toxic relationship with booze before we realize that all it does is keeps us stuck, keeps us going back to drinking like we were. We need to move through that. Moderation just causes more pain. It makes us have to make more decisions and causes more internal conflict, like we looked at earlier. Develop your self-awareness. Start to label and name your feelings. I'll touch on that in a minute. Learn from any setbacks you have. Instead of getting upset, and it's natural to get upset about a setback, ask yourself what it's teaching you. What have you learned from it? What's the good in this? And there's good in everything because there's lessons you can take. For example, if you drove past a store where you always bought booze, that caused a trigger, which caused a huge craving, and then you drank, you know that store has that effect on you. Start taking a different route home. Sounds simple, but it is. You need to start putting boundaries around the things that trigger you. And if that causes a setback, all the more reason to get really, really deep into it and understand it. Consider setting some goals. So aside from alcohol, what is it you want to achieve? What do you want to do over the next year with your life? When I first quit, I signed up to a marathon 6 months later. So my focus wasn't entirely on sobriety. I was training for that. I was doing my daily training and showing up for that. And that also helped to shift my focus. So I wasn't thinking about sobriety all the time. So think about what goals, and I don't mean run a marathon unless you want to. Think about some goals for yourself. That goals don't work for everybody, but for some people they're a big motivator. And of course, you achieve lots of goals, lots of milestones in sobriety as well. You know, your first week alcohol free, that's a badge. Your first month, the first time you go to the store and don't buy booze. All of these things are milestones. So don't see them as something to get down about. See them as something to shout about, something to celebrate, and enjoy the experience. Celebrate your progress. Treat sobriety like your biggest new hobby. I think John, who's on, he's one of the people in my program. He's got an awesome story. I was going to ask him to share, but I don't know if I'm going to get time. But he coined that phrase, treat sobriety like a new hobby. And it's so true. It really is a wonderful thing. Why is an alcohol-free life so superior? What you gain, and I'm just whizzing through these. Your mental health massively improves. Anxiety and stress, depression, all of these things fade. And my anxiety was terrible. It was probably 8 or 9 out of 10. And then after I quit, it started to fade. My moods would swing and all of that started to stabilize as everything rebalanced. And yes, there's a period of rebalancing. You feel calmer, mentally resilient, able to cope better, especially with stressful situation. Your skin, your eyes, all of it improves. The darkness goes. Your face is no longer bloated. Take a selfie right at the start and then take another one 30 days later and compare the two. It's absolutely incredible. Your nails, your hair, alcohol makes them all brittle and weak. You'll have better sleep. Your sleep can be disrupted at the start, but after a short period of time, for some people it's a bit longer, for some it's shorter, you'll be sleeping better than you've ever slept. Better partners, better parents, better colleagues, employees. You're more motivated, energized, enthusiastic. You get in control of your decisions. You don't make decisions that you later regret. Or if you do, you did it consciously. That's a good thing. You'll save a fortune. How much have you been wasting on booze? We remember everything. And that's something absolutely awesome. Right, and then I've got a couple of, oh, sorry, there's more. Ability to think clearly, freedom to enjoy the activities that bring you joy, a sense of feeling fulfilled in life, and you continue to grow. So after you quit drinking, you start to look at other areas of your life. You become so self-aware that you just want to keep on improving. And I often see people who start with sobriety and then they look at their diet, they might quit smoking, they might start exercising more, they might explore things from their past. It's an amazing journey. It really is. It's not just about putting the bottle down. This is about becoming a new version of you, a new amazing version of you. What do you lose when you stop drinking? Now, we looked at this at the start with false beliefs. I'd be interested to hear, but I couldn't find much to put on this list. What do you lose? You lose hangovers. That's a good thing. You lose the ability to do things you regret unless you do it consciously. You might lose a few friends. I lost one or two, but alcohol was the glue that kept us together. So I don't think they were really true friends in the first place. When you quit drinking, you find out who your real friends are. They're the friends you want, the friends who support you through thick and thin, the friends who've got your back, the friends who want you to succeed in sobriety. So you might lose a few friends. That's nothing to worry about. You will lose having poor mental health. All of that improves. And you stop thinking about alcohol all the time. So you lose that too. No more decisions, no more obsessing, no more hiding drink, no more lying to your partner or whoever about your boozing. No more cravings. You lose those too. However, for the first period, yes, they can come thick and fast. I was having cravings every few minutes when I first quit, and I had to stand in the storm. I had to let them pass through. But as I did that, I gained the power over them, and I noticed how they became less frequent and less strong. And that absolutely happens. You've got to trust in the process that will happen. And you lose the risk to your physical health. You reduce your chances of death, the chances of cancer significantly. I mean, that's absolutely huge, especially at the moment. Alcohol affects your immune system. We don't want low immune systems at the moment. And you lose the ability to blot out uncomfortable feelings and emotions with a drug. And for some of us, we do that. We've been using it for that. And that actually means taking off a mask and looking in the mirror at who we really are. And that can seem kind of scary. And I will touch on that. And I just want you to consider when you think about drinking or any form of addictive behavior, start to pause for a minute. If you're thinking, okay, Simon's talked a load of sense, but I'm still going to drink wine tonight because I'm going to relax. Just pause. What is it you really need? It isn't alcohol. It's something else. It's something deeper. What is it you really need? Try and answer that question. What you really need. Often for me, because I mentioned about my feelings of rejection, what I often need is to feel wanted and appreciated, maybe hugged. Often I just need a hug and it's all better. So what is it you really need? If you can answer that question, you'll probably start to find the whole thing super easy, because you can pause every time. What is it I really need in this moment? Actually, I needed to feel appreciated. I needed to feel heard. I needed to feel validated. If you get to the bottom of that, you won't need booze because you'll know what you need. That's called healthy coping mechanisms and meeting your needs in a healthy way. And sometimes you might need a donut. You might need a piece of chocolate, which I will touch on. Right. I'm not going to go massively into the dangers of alcohol because I'm so mindful of the time. So you'll get sent this. But what I'm going to do, I'm just going to do it in a poll for you to quickly read. So there's 2 slides there about the dangers of drinking. And I'm just going to share the poll now. So I want to know if you've worried about any of these things or experienced them. And you can answer multiple on that one as well. I know for me, I used to worry about my liver and I used to worry about cancer. I actually lost a good friend who was 47 2 years ago. And he wasn't known to be a huge drinker, but he did go up the pub most evenings for a couple of pints of beer, and he'd do the same at lunchtimes. And he got liver disease and he passed away. He had 2 beautiful young daughters. He and his wife were both partners in law firms, really successful careers. It was the last person you would have expected this to happen to. And it makes me emotional thinking about it. And I was at his funeral. I saw his 8-year-old daughter read out a poem to her dad, who she had lost to booze. And it just seemed to come out of the blue. One minute he seemed okay. The next minute he was in hospital with problems. It was horrific. It really was. Okay, let's share the poll. So it looks like pretty much all of us have worried about stuff. And the main one is mental health, which, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Cancer's right up there, liver problems. But again, I'm going to share that slide with you, but it doesn't surprise me. And it's important to remember this. It doesn't always happen to someone else. It's too easy to just think it never happens to me. Let go of that. You're kidding yourself. I was kidding myself. It just hasn't happened to us yet. So don't think that. Don't think it can't happen to me. None of us are immune. It's a poison. Alcohol is ethanol. They put it in rocket fuel, aviation fuel. That's what they use ethanol for. And that's the stuff. That fuel is what we put inside of ourselves. I'm pretty sure you wouldn't drink fuel. And now we know that alcohol actually elevates our anxiety, our stress, and our mood. I actually look at alcohol like anxiety in a bottle. I just visualize the label. If I was ever to think about drinking, that's what I would see on the label. It will destroy my anxiety. Why am I going to do that? So what is it to you? What would you put on that label? What's alcohol? Maybe it's, mental health destruction in a bottle. Maybe it's ruining my relationships in a bottle. Whatever it is, visualize it like that, because that's what it's done to you. It's like a toxic relationship where it's been lying to you, cheating on you, and now it's time to get the truth about this stuff. That's a really interesting poll. Thanks for filling that in. Okay, so best method to start in sobriety: journal, journal, journal. I can't say it enough. Even if you hate the idea of writing, even if you just take 5 minutes a day, please start journaling. There's an app you can get called iMood Journal. That allows you to track your mood. You can set it so it randomly asks you at different times in the day. That's really useful for seeing how your mood changes throughout the course of the day. It's like $2 to get the paid version of this app, one-time payment. I haven't got shares in the company. It's well worth getting that. And you can put notes next to each entry. So you can use it like a journal on your phone and track your mood, look at the graphs, and you can notice when your mood is changing. And there might be times when that's to do with your diet, or you're not hydrated, you're feeling tired, and obviously around alcohol. Audit your environment. Now, environment is massive. And what I mean by that is if you've got alcohol in the house, there's a temptation to drink. You've got to make a decision every time you see it. If there's no alcohol in the house, there's no decision. Just like if you were on a diet and you came home, you haven't prepared dinner, and all that's in the fridge is a box of donuts, you've got to use willpower not to have them. If it's not there, there's no decision. But do prepare a healthy meal beforehand. So think about what poses a threat to your sobriety. What people, what places, what behaviors, what situations pose a threat, and put some boundaries in place. Do what you need to do. Pour it down the sink. If there's people that you don't want to associate with because you'll drink around them, set some boundaries. Do what you need to do. Much of this process is about learning to say no. Stop people pleasing. You don't need to do that anymore, because you're going to become empowered, and learning to find your no is so important. Reinforce your new beliefs with real world experiences. So, for example, I can't have fun without drinking. Go and experience it without alcohol, and then it will become a proper true belief. As you actually get the evidence, it becomes a concrete belief. Find a tribe, I mentioned that. Consider alternative drinks to fill the void. There's loads of alcohol-free options out there. I don't just mean beers and wines. If you find alcohol-free beers or wines to be triggering or too much like the real thing, don't touch them. But there's lots of botanical alcohol-free drinks which have got a taste all of their own. And myself and lots of other people in my communities have found them to be really useful. They've got themselves a special alcohol-free glass that they've bought as a treat to themselves. And they've really explored those with absolute enthusiasm. Look on websites like Dry Drinker, Wise Bartender. Look on Amazon. Seedlip is a good place to start. In the US, Monday Gin is a good one to look at. There's loads of them. Throw yourself into it. These drinks are amazing and you will get so much out of them. So ensure you've got a handful of tactics to deal with cravings and emotional discomfort. I'm going to try and share a couple with you, but look on my YouTube channel and I'll put this in the email. I'm going to send you some videos to tactics for actually dealing with the cravings, specific ones as well. And I'll get that out as soon as possible. Keep learning. Books, blogs, videos, and work on self-love. So many people that I work with, and I felt the same, 3 words come up: not good enough. They have an underlying sense that they're not good enough. That comes from our childhood, often from emotional neglect, which is a very, very subtle form of, it's not abuse, it's just a subtle form of neglect that can come up when a parent is stressed around a child under the age of 5, and they're projecting stress onto that child. Often they don't even know it. Maybe they're too busy with their work and they don't listen, or they're angry or whatever. Often a child can get a sense that they're not good enough or they're to blame. It's okay to put yourself first and start working on that stuff as you move through this as well. But you actually are good enough. You really are. And it's easy for me to say that and you still won't believe me, but you can work on it. You can connect in groups and you can actually start to work on this stuff. And the bottom one, if you take anything away from this, start learning to say no when you want to say no and stop pleasing people. It's okay. And when you do it the first time, you get a whole new power. You realize that you don't die when you do it. And if you upset somebody, that's their problem. The fact that they've had a triggering emotional reaction, that's their problem, not your problem. You're just speaking your truth. You're just being honest.